Hey Daniel and hey Naveen, thank you so much for agreeing to this call. I've been following your journey on Facebook and different other places, and I love what you guys do with your daughter. Her name, would you tell her name?
Her name is Kiara.
Kiara. Okay. So I love watching her, that missing from school aspect that she brings in, and I'm quite pro world schooling, and I love what you guys do. So please tell us about yourself and how all this began. Yeah.
All right, it's yeah, I think it first of all good to be chatting. I think it's a small community here in India, and it's nice to be sharing our story and be inspired by others. So our journey actually we've always been traveling quite a bit with Kiara. She's our only child. She just turned 13 this past weekend. So while we were traveling, one of our trips was actually to Antarctica. And these are small expedition ships, so they're not your fancy cruise ships with, all the entertainment and stuff. So they're very, very educative in terms of, what they have to offer. And we went into, we're not planned that far in advance. We did it. It was a longish journey, over 21, 22 days on board with under 200 fellow passengers, and she was really the youngest. And we didn't know, but on board were, all these lectures. You had all these experts on the expedition team that were, geologists and marine biologists and penguinologists, ornithologists, glaciologist, experts in, professors, geopolitics, lots of different, and there were lectures from morning to evening, in Antarctica in the peak of their summer in December, close to 22, 23 hours of sunlight. So you can go out even later in the evening. So when you're not off the ship on expeditions, or on excursions rather, you're actually on board and these people are having different lectures and they time it to what you're about to see. So before you see glaciers for the first time, a glaciologist is talking about what glaciers are, what climate change is doing to them, etc. Kiara was 8 at the time. And honestly, if any other parent had told us this, that, a child at 8 is able to absorb, stuff like that, I wouldn't believe it. But Kiara was, these lectures would start at 8 in the morning. Sometimes we would wake up and we'd find her not in the room. And we'd know she's, it's a small ship, it's safe by the uh, third or fourth day, you pretty much know everybody on board. And so she was out there, we'd walk out, we'd see her in the middle of this lecture, sometimes raising her hand and asking questions. And very unlike her, because she's quite a shy, introverted kid. And she was just a completely different person. In fact, Dan coined a term for her on board there. Uh, you want to talk about
Yeah, the name of the ship was the Ocean Endeavor. So we called her Ocean Endeavor Kiara because we've never ever seen her like that. So sometimes when we're talking about different things or about a place where she has to go and interact, I'm like, bring out Ocean Endeavor Kiara. So
that? Yeah. So just her level of confidence, her level of just engaging with these people that had so much of knowledge for real world things, right? So that was really the start. That was the spark, I'd say. We came back, and unfortunately, I mean, there was definitely a thought of saying, this is what we need to expose her to a lot more of. And unfortunately, COVID happened. And while we were in the midst of, I was trying to convince her. I put together this 60-slide presentation to saying why being out of school will be better than being in school. And we had told her at that point in time, even though she was maybe 8, 9, turning 9, that we wanted her to be convinced also that, be involved with the decision. As parents, we would take ownership for the decision. We're not saying that a child is capable of taking their own decisions at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but we wanted her to be part of that decision-making process.
not
So,
just part of the decision-making process, but also have agency in it. Wasn't something that we were just doing by ourselves and taking control of the whole situation.
Yeah. So we basically had told her that till you say you're 100% sure, we won't pull you out of school. And initially she was like, what about my friends? And we talked about it. We talked about the pros and cons for a kid that's already been in the schooling system, that sort of friend circle every day, and COVID kids had in India, kids hadn't been to school in 2 years, So I mean, even at that stage, so I'm confusing pre-COVID and post. But we told her, at that stage, still she got to 100%. But then COVID happened. We didn't. She went to online schooling. And then after COVID, she went back to school, and we hadn't talked about it through the two years of COVID because for us, travel was going to be a very, very important aspect of her exposure. And through COVID, if we weren't going to be able to travel, then that wasn't possible. So after COVID, she returned to school. She was doing very well. She participated in school elections and she was, like the kids got together. I think 20% of their life was lost through COVID, right? Kids that age. So when they went back, they're all grown up. They're sort of the way they behave pre-COVID to post-COVID had changed substantially. So when we talked about it, our first reaction was no way. So we'd gone from near 100% of her being nearly on board pre-COVID to literally 0% when we first talked about it, maybe in February of 22. So we said, fine. I mean, we said, if it's your decision, if you don't want to do it, that's okay. But we also sort of, talked about the fact that she would have been going to sixth grade at the time.
Yeah.
And we said, if we wanted to be in a society like ours, where there's a lot of academic pressure and stuff like that, the later you do it, I think there's more risks associated with it. So we said, the longer you wait in school, the more difficult the alternate option of alternate schooling is going to be. So sort of we said, it's sort of now's a good time and the later is going to get tough. And we left it at that. And literally 1 week before school closed, she came and we talked about it off and on, but she came 1 week before school and said, before school ended in May of 22 and said, okay, I want to do it. And then we started, we'd already planned, some vacation in the summer, which wasn't really unschooling. So we had to, pack a few things in. But that's how it started. We actually involved her in the decision making and, it's been fabulous since, yeah.
Amazing. So, were you reading someone? Were you following someone, and you knew that this could be done? Did you have someone in mind, or were you following these communities or world schooling or homeschooling that you felt that no, we can do? Because you don't see this kind of learning very commonly in India, right? So, were you inspired by someone, or
No, I think it was definitely our own personal experience with Kiara and seeing her. And actually, through those 2 years of COVID, while we say we didn't travel a lot, she had actually gone diving with a group in the Maldives. She had started when she was 9. It was during COVID. And then again, at a little past 10 years old, she'd gone diving again, a group that's sort of not a fun diving, just dive for the sake of diving, sort of a very conscientious group. Uh, and again, there, the way she was engaging, was very similar to that Antarctica kind of experience. So it was primarily, I don't think, to be honest, we knew anybody else
Who was
that
doing
was
this?
homeschooling or
Yeah,
doing
so
anything.
it worried us a bit because we didn't know anyone else, especially in Mumbai, in India, who was doing this. But just based on Kiara's reaction to different experiences and people that she was around, we decided to take this decision.
this is quite
Yeah.
amazing because you have this fear, right? What am I doing? Nobody's doing. Everybody has to get the 10th and 12th certificate, isn't it? So that kind of fear, these are so ingrained in us. And
Yeah.
when I, it's very similar for me when with my son Adi. Now he's 10, and when I saw the way he used to learn during COVID, and I was like, wow. I mean, what kind of questions he's asking me? And I found that this was such an amazing opportunity for me to sit and learn with him instead of packing him and packing the box and putting him in a box. I realized, oh my god, what was I doing?
Yeah.
And yeah. You're saying something.
Yeah, I think it's just that the learning, I think initially, obviously, uh, the lens was purely about her learning and her exposure.
Mm.
But as we got started with our journey, we figured, how much we were learning alongside her. So we sort of became fellow students through the process at times,
Mm.
right? Or most of the time, we're sort of fellow students. We're also learning so much, and it's been fascinating. I think it's definitely evolving. When you talked about homeschooling, unschool, I mean, just give you an example of where we were at. We thought when we were doing this, for example, that we were definitely going to homeschool her. And then we start to look at, read more. As you said, we weren't directly exposed to anybody. But when we started to go out and join Facebook groups or whatever, and we learned of the concept of unschooling. And then we figured, okay, unschooling is where you leave the kid all by himself or herself to learn whatever they choose and do as they please with their time, etc. And we certainly weren't doing that. I think we were curating a lot more stuff based on interest, based on what we thought she would want exposure to or we would want her to be exposed to. So then we realized, and then we came across, this Worldschooling and all of that. Theoretically, we aren't following any system, we aren't following a curriculum. So I
Mm.
think we're just doing our own thing. So there's still some confusion about what we're doing, but I think we're traveling so much just now that our journey is probably closest to Worldschooling, but it's a very fast-paced, like we're traveling
Mm.
quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not where we're stationed in one place, so it's fairly strenuous travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's been amazing.
So how do you manage this travel, your work, and making sure
I
that
think
kindergarten learns? So how do you manage this?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate in that respect. So Dan took a break when Kiara was born. We were working together. We ran our own business at the time, and I think as Kiara was growing, or a little before COVID, that I thought I needed to take a break and spend more time with her. She was growing up way too fast without me actually spending as much time with her or the family, and so that was a decision that I'd already taken. So I was in a space where, I was not fortunate to be able to
Mm.
not have neither of us to have full-time professional commitments at this stage of our lives.
Mm.
Uh, and no, there are definitely risks involved, whether it's, pulling her out of school or with what we're
Correct.
doing. Um, multiple aspects as well. But I think, like I said, the time is now, right? It's not where we can say, hey, we can do this 5 years from now.
Correct.
I mean, she's already been shaped as an individual. Some of her life choices may already have been made. So
Mm.
I think really the process that we're going with now is, I think it's also different. We've been doing this for almost 2 years.
Mm.
The difference between year one and year two is
Yeah, the journey
significantly different.
has evolved every year.
Mm.
We haven't followed any kind of set pattern or
Mm.
curriculum or anything of the sort. Uh, every year has been different. I mean, I would say every month sometimes is different based on what we do and based on what her continuously growing interests are. She loves history, so when we travel, a lot of it is, or a lot of what we do is history based.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, along the way, she's learning about geography and also economics and the socioeconomic condition of each place and how it impacts lives and her life and that just that journey. Things that we have to consciously spend time on when we're not traveling is math, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and science, I think, comes just from the way of living everyday life and how science is involved in every single thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we really follow anything. It's just part of the journey that goes on every day.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Naveen, yeah.
No, I think just as Dan said, it's been very organic, and it's been, I think, a lot of fun. After a year, when we started, um, we had come up with this list. We asked her to list out, things that she'd be interested in, things that Dan and I felt that she needed to be exposed to, and we came up as a family with a list of about 15 things. And they included, elements like horse riding and skiing, for example, right? Apart from, some subject material, some languages. And as we went, wherever possible, she had a little exposure to stuff. And then she started to, realize what she was enjoying a lot more of and what sort of was by the way where she's really not going, doesn't see herself, sort of it's nice to be exposed to, but not a deep interest. And like Dan said, history was, a subject where, just there was so much interest that we'd go to a place, we first always when we travel try and find a great tour guide or somebody that's really going to be passionate to spend as much time with us while we're in that place, in that town, in that little city, village. We don't do a lot of cities, to be honest. But when we are, so I think that's critical, is that we have that local expert uh, that it becomes our teacher for that day, 2 days, 3 days, wherever we are. And then the amount of learning and absorption that's happening. And that happens with anything of focus. So typically, I'd say, nature, conservation, the oceans, she's really interested in. So when we're in those spaces, there's a lot more, interest and learning there. And then history is the other subject. And so in the second year, a lot of that evolved towards we had more time focused on really some of these deeper pieces. It doesn't mean that, if we're going to, like we went Brazil around the Amazon, that while we're there, going to explore the nature of the Amazon, that we don't want, we'll do the other historical, the other stuff, whether it's history or anything else while we're in the region. And that happens anywhere. So while we're doing a lot of this, so much of world history that's been learned by all three of us, but particularly Kiara, colonization, slavery. And the amazing part is that you can connect the dots to almost everything, right? Even uh, continents apart, something that's happened like last year, we were obviously in India, we were doing some traveling, and then we'd gone to Turkey and then gone to the US. And, there was so much connected from the American Revolution, their war for independence, to, what was happening in India between the French and the British in Chennai and Pondicherry, right? And it's been interesting for post these visits to these places. While we're driving, we'll be listening to podcasts. So the learning goes a lot deeper. We go back, cross-check facts, try to connect the dots. And we do that with these two particular, nature and history. And I think when we came back, Kiara expressed this, but Dan had also realized that she had learned so much about world history, and she'd been reading about Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology from a very early age, that she wasn't as exposed to Indian history and Indian mythology. And so for the last 6 months, that's been a huge focus for us. So we've only been traveling in India primarily, reading about Indian religions, Indian mythology, traveling, and, wherever you go, it's just been fascinating. So, for example, some of the things she's picking herself. So we went to Kutch, where the reason to go to Kutch was Dholavira in the Indus Valley civilization site there. But obviously we did, so much of other stuff there during the 10 days that it was, you cover going and seeing temples, you see, old trade routes, that we didn't know about before, right? What made the Maharajas, that ruled Kutch very rich, and how they traded, how so much to learn in every corner of the world. And we've been exploring India over the last 6 or 8 months. So it's been amazing.
Nice, very nice. I mean, look at this kind of learning now, where you can easily connect, you can easily be curious, and you can cater to whatever kind of question that you might have in your brain. And it's such a phenomena-based learning where you can see interconnectedness in everything. And sadly, everything is so much categorized in otherwise a built curriculum that it's you always think one thing is so different from another that you don't find the connections at all. But look at
And
this, how nature and how history and how learning, and it becomes such, actually this is a very, she's developing the skills, to learn, to fall in
Yeah,
love with learning so naturally.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the dots, that fascination of the dots connect, like one of the even within history, for example, Mughal history has been her biggest fascination point. So obviously we did Delhi and Agra, and we did like every little thing, like even, or within Agra, we didn't just do the top 2 or 3 sites. We went to every, we went far, other than the standard Taj and the fort and Fatehpur Sikri, we went to, Akbar's tomb in Sikandra and lots of different places. And the same in Delhi, we did tours over 2 days in Old Delhi, in Shah Jahanabad, and all of that. And and since we've been traveling, right, you'll find the connections to Mughal history. We went to Kashmir, and you see the Mughal gardens there. We were in Aurangabad. Obviously, the city is named after Aurangzeb, but again, fascinating stories there, right? Of you see the Taj Mahal built by Shah Jahan, wasn't meant for himself, but he would have built one an equal size mausoleum for himself. But Aurangzeb, the following ruler, just had his little, a little tomb open to the skies, in a backyard in some gullies of not even Aurangabad, right, the neighboring town, and that continues, right? In Udaipur, you hear about how the royal family gave Shah Jahan asylum in what is called Jagmandir now, close to the Lake Palace, or in Kutch. In fact, we were staying in the Sharad Bagh Palace. They run a nice homestay, the current royal family. And on our last night there, a family member was chatting with us, and he said, "Do you know Dara Shikoh, who's Shah Jahan's original heir to the throne before Aurangzeb killed the son and dethroned his father? That Dara Shikoh was running away from Aurangzeb and actually took shelter in that palace premises,
Mm.
and sort of, where we were staying. So it's amazing to sort of and I think through such kind of exploration and the stories that you hear firsthand, you can actually go and see things that they stay with you
Right.
forever,
Right.
much longer than
Yeah.
uh, you know if you had done, even if you're traveling and you're exposed
Mm.
to something in a museum or something when you visit a palace, right? You tend to forget, no matter how interested you are. But the fact that you're able to connect all these dots, listen to these names over and over again, I
Mm.
think it's fascinating. So her retention is very impressive for a child. I'm not saying this just because she's our daughter. I think it's just sort of this medium of learning. Just also for us, I would never have retained this from a textbook, in comparison to what this is now. So I think,
We remember dozing off in history sessions. That's all we remember. And hiding our heads so that the teacher doesn't see us. That's all we remember from the history classes. And we have read, we haven't gone beyond. And this is the reason. I'm sure many people would have fallen in love with history if they would have gone and explored, right? And
that,
I think once you take that sip of exploration and you know how you can, go to another level of learning, and I think
right.
you guys have tasted that sip, and now you just can't stop, I'm sure. So
Right.
Yeah.
when Kiara
But
comes back, yeah, you're saying something.
no, I think that's one thing. I think for other parents listening into this show,
Hmm.
or we try to meet other people, is to really, uh, the one thing is that we underestimate the absorption power of children. And we did it also as young parents. And I think when we look around, most parents think that the kids won't be interested in something, and you just don't know that. I'm not saying every kid is interested in history, but any other interest, right? Is that we tend to think that it'll be boring for that child, so let's not do it. Or 4 hours in this space is not going to be exciting enough.
Hmm.
So I'm a big motorsport fan. To give you a small example, we were in the UK just after we pulled out of school, and we were doing, a bunch of things now focused on her. Like we do museums differently. Before we'd probably avoid museums. Now we're focused again. She decides whether she loves a museum or not, right? So in London, for example, we went to the British Museum was the first museum we went to.
No, it was the
The British
Natural
Museum,
History Museum.
the first, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to the two museums, the two top. I mean, London has many museums, but the British Museum, we just come from Egypt, and she saw all this Egyptian gallery, and she was like, "There's nothing British here," and she was quite upset. And I told her, go talk to the curators, talk to somebody, express your point of view, ask your questions. Um, but she wasn't interested in spending much time there. And then we went to the Natural History Museum that Dan's talking about, and we actually spent she wondered, we were the first, amongst the first to enter. We were literally the last to leave at 6 or 6:30 in the evening, but they shut. And she wanted to go back there for another day and spend a whole, a whole day there. So, I think the advice to parents is, just like um, and we were fascinated by on that first trip to Antarctica, is that she was just interested in things that we would never have imagined that a child of that age would be interested in. And coming back to the London example, after we were doing all these museums and stuff, we found ourselves, slightly north of London, and I wanted to go to Silverstone, which is the track where the Formula One, is held, and British motorsport, very historical. And I pleaded with them saying, "Hey, 2 hours, just let me go in there. I'm sorry, I know you guys will get bored, but come along for 2 hours and, give me the 2 hours there because I want to go there." And we went in, we got tickets for all the three of us. I was done in 2 hours, but Kiara didn't want to leave. And, she was learning about aerodynamics, and Dan was explaining stuff to her on physics and
the science behind all of it.
yeah, and you never know. I mean, again, she has no interest in motorsport or in stuff like that. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, she was fascinated by the place for, what it had to offer. So I think we just need to expose our kids. Even when we're in town in Bombay, we're doing so much more, joining walking tours, going to, whatever there is to offer. There is stuff if you're interested in just people and culture and nature, right? Even in a busy city like Bombay. I mean, we go out now to marine walks on Juhu Beach. The first time I heard about this is like, I've grown up in Bombay, lived my life, lived all my life here. And if you told me there was stuff to see on Juhu Beach, I'd laugh at you. But we went to Juhu Beach with some experts again. And within about 5 to 10 minutes, we saw more than 5 different species of crabs, on the intertidal zone, on the sandbank, and in the tidal pools around the water. And you saw anemone and lots of different things. And I think it's fascinating. We go out at least twice a season to when the flamingos are here, and you see a ton of other birds. And I think you start to ask more questions and understand different patterns with weather, why birds are moving, and just learn so much from just those little outings.
I think
And you get
that the way you are actually concluding this talk, in the sense that, highlighting the idea of learning is exploration. And, we should never be scared to give kids that space and time, because we have come with that kind of a fixed mindset where we believe that this is going to work. These are the 7 subjects. You learn this way, you score this much, and then you reach somewhere, and then you keep going towards that. But I think the way you are learning and the way you are seeing things, like you said, you've been to the beach, but now that when you go with a different perspective, you open up to so many ideas of, living and learning. And I think that is one point that many of us have missed. And I think the more parents I meet like you, this is what I learn, and this is what I think parents can learn, is, when you have this kind of openness where you are ready to, you know it's okay to spend some more time, like, going. And sometimes you think that your child might not be interested in something, right? Like, she went and started asking questions that you would not have expected. She was learning science on her own because it was so self driven, right? And when it is self driven, I don't think so anything can be more beautiful than that. And I think that space and that trust and that environment that you have built is amazing. Thank you so much, Naveen and Daniel, for being here. And I can talk to you like 6 7 hours straight and go on asking you questions, and I will do that in due time, but not now. But thank you so much for being here and enlightening us with your journey. It's fascinating, and I can't catch hold of Kiara and hear all about her journey whenever she's ready. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I mean, you can connect with her at any time. We're happy for her to, speak. I mean, I know you wanted to conclude the call, but that was one of the things of also her at a young age. We're aware of kids on social media and stuff like that, but I think it was important for us to see her document some of our learning at least,
Mhm.
right? In whatever that format was. And we gave her the choice of saying, you form a diary, you use a blog, you do whatever, you feel you're comfortable with. And I think, again, the way she tries to use Instagram is given her, while she's out there, she's
Mhm.
learning to come back and take, some of those that learning, some of the visuals that she's got. She edits her own videos, creates reels, puts it out there. She does these quizzes, so it's a good format. So we're, comfortable with her sort of being there. Hopefully it's inspiring other parents because we are, I think really feel blessed to be on this journey. And like I said, it's not about the affordability of being able to travel far and wide, which we're fortunate to do. But like I said, even closer to home, there's just so much you can do. We get invited to factories right close by, like anywhere. We were in an automobile factory recently, right? There could be a food factory somewhere where we're going, and there's learning as well, right? She's gone to offices where she's been able to shadow people in different departments at an early age. And some of the best advice she's got that I want to share again for your listeners is, somebody told her, one of her mentors told her that it's
Asked her.
okay. Asked her,
Yeah.
why don't you tell her the
So
story?
she asked her, given all the exposure that you've had, do you know what you'd like to be when you grow up? And Kiara very nervously said that she didn't. And so the mentor said, that's absolutely fine that you don't know. It's in fact, it's more important that you know what you don't want to do rather than what you want to do at this age.
Yeah.
So,
And not just at
yeah,
this age, she said for any age. And
yeah.
the presumption was because, she was with this mentor spending a lot of time in the ocean. And this was one of her first dive instructors. So the presumption was she'd want to do something in marine biology or, the oceans or something like that.
Mhm.
She's going to a 21-day camp now where she won't see us and
Oh.
stay at sea without a phone or anything on a small sailboat for 21 days because she loves sort of ocean life and things like that. So the presumption was you'll make your career also in, in
Correct.
some. Okay, I said I'm not sure. And I think that's great advice for kids of this generation that have so many options and so much clutter to just sort of know, okay, I don't want to do, something like this. And again, we've tried to caution her to say, don't come from a point of privilege because today we may be privileged to pick and choose and not everybody is in that state, uh, right, but at least know, right. So I think that's good advice to again end this show at,
Thank you so
perhaps.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, these were the questions
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you beautifully said already.
Okay,
I'll keep
perfect. Lovely
I'll keep
chatting.
learning from you. It's fascinating to have, to know someone who's doing things like that, which opens up your brain and your mind. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing with your heart. This was a beautiful, talk that I had after a very long time. So thank you so much.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Priyanka.
Priyanka. Good luck with everything. Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.